Hi everyone, I am so happy to be here and I am going to be able to have a chat with Dr. Carolyn Kirscher, who is an embryologist, and we're really going to be talking about how an embryo is formed and how it's developed, and who better to talk to about it than an embryologist. We're here to talk about third-party reproduction. So as soon as she joins, I'm going to let her in, and okay, she's waving now. I just have to have her request and then we'll be good to go. So if anybody has any questions or there's anything that they want to know from her, I'm sure she'd be more than happy to answer. I think you just have to send out a request and then they'll let you come onto the live. You'll see it in a minute. The requests will come up. Okay, let's just see what's happening here. And I am hoping they let you request very soon. I know you're here. I just want to get you on. Okay, we're going to get you on. That will happen. If you raise your hand and you request it, you should be able to just come right on since we're opening this up for requests. Do you see that? I know you will. I have no doubt. You do so much work in the lab and find out so much detail, and you are the founder of ART Compass, so there's so much going on with you that I know that you'll be on in a minute. So let's just get you on here now. Okay. Let me just see if there's something else we can do. I am not sure why you're not coming on yet. And I'm putting on my glasses to get really serious about this one, but you should be able to sign on with the live, and I do believe you should be able to get on any minute, Carol. It's going to ask the participants to join, and at that point, here we go. Okay, I hope you got that request. Did you get that? Okay, I'm going to send it to you one more time. Okay. I don't know if you have the latest version of Instagram, so you should get it. I sent it to you twice, and I see that you're there. I see you're there two different ways. And let me just see, I sent you 2 requests to join, so that should come on really quickly. Let me know if you don't see it, okay? But it should pop up on your screen. And in the meantime, I'd like to thank everybody who did join today and just give them a little bit of background on what we're doing. So we have been working on third-party reproduction, and the third-party reproduction is to normalize it so that everybody feels comfortable in their own skin. And so we started over the summer, actually, and we've done a series of Instagram Lives. And since we've done this series of Instagram Lives, we have been able to, okay, let me send it one more time, and hopefully this will. It says that you need the latest version of Instagram Live, of Instagram. I'm not sure if you have the latest version, but that's what it's requesting. So if you don't have the latest version, please just let me know, and then I'll just give everybody a quick update, and we'll try and do this another time. But it just says you need the latest version. Okay, so in the meantime, let me give everybody a quick update on what's been happening. So we have had a series of Instagram Lives, and for those people who have seen it or joined it or been part of it, I appreciate it, and I hope that you've enjoyed listening to it. We did our petition. We still have our petition going on for the American Medical Association. We are going to go strong with the AMA, and we're going to try and figure out the best ways to approach them. We're going to try and engage more doctors, and I think that is the way to do it, through science and doctors. And we started a letter writing campaign, and the letter writing campaign is really to help with advocacy and to help you use your voice in being heard. So if anybody is interested in the letter writing campaign, please go to the link in my bio or go to my website, and I have a page specifically devoted to third-party reproduction on there. We also are doing a second webinar. We did the first webinar, which was a great introduction, I think, to the topic, and so honored and humbled by the people that were on it. I can't thank them enough, and they really gave their perspective and their understanding about why they think it's so important to include how somebody was was conceived on a medical intake form. And we want this to transcend the medical intake form. We want it to move forward and include college applications in anywhere somebody asks for medical history, so that people can begin to feel comfortable in their own skin. And then we had Barb Clore, who's the president of Resolve. We had Dr. Serena Chin, who I think most people who listen to me must know her, and she's beyond spectacular. Of course, we had Camille Gante, who has been such an inspiration to so many of us, an advocate and a working mom and an actress and a great spokesperson. And we had the president of Donor Concierge on, who was great. Gail really shared her story and shared so much of the history. We had a doctor on who works with the transgender community to really talk about how this plays a part in understanding who somebody is. And of course, we had the one and only Wonder Woman writer, Jay Palumbo, and she has just been spectacular. So that was wonderful. And we are scheduling the next one. And the next one is going to focus more on the parents and having the parents through donor conception, and to talk about really the application and how it feels to not have something like that included. So looking forward to it. And here you are, as I've been talking and talking. Can you hear me?
I can hear.
Carol? Oh, technical issues. Okay. They happen all the time, but I'm so glad you're here. I got you. Okay, great. Well, welcome.
Perfect.
It's a little spotty, but I can hear you.
Okay. I'm going to try to hold it up a
Now
little. Is that better?
Okay. Yeah, that's better. That's better.
Is that better?
That's great. Actually, we get a pretty view.
Okay.
Yeah, that's perfect. Actually, that's really great.
I had to come over by the window, I guess.
Well, that's
so good to see you.
You too. It's such a pleasure, and I love talking to you. So I'm like so excited to actually really see you and talk to you at the same time.
I know.
It's great. I know.
Are you going to ASRM this year?
No, I'm doing it virtually because I'm away. I will be away. I'm going to be away that week. So, are you going?
I'm going. I have 2 posters, scientific posters, 2 abstracts this year.
Oh my God. I'm so thrilled you had the time to come on here. I know I feel really badly because quite a few people asked, and I won't be, I'm traveling, so I won't be, but I did sign up for the virtual, so hopefully I'll be able to make a couple of the things, and hopefully I'll see you next year at it. I hope so.
Yeah.
That'd be a treat. That'd be a treat. So we're here to talk about third-party reproduction. And I was saying when I introduced you, who better to talk to about third-party reproduction than an embryologist?
Yeah, right. So much of what I do is third party. And
I want to back up just a little bit, if you don't mind. I just want to make sure that I did tell everybody who you are, but you probably fill them in just a little bit more. I was telling everybody that that you were an embryologist and that we really do want to start and talk about what's going on in the lab. But also I started to tell people that you were the founder of ART Compass and how it all works together. And I have had actually the pleasure and the honor of talking to Carol twice now on podcasts. So I was really thrilled that she wanted to come on and be part of the Instagram live series for third-party reproduction to try and normalize it because of her background. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. So yeah, my background, just really quick. I have a PhD in reproduction. So I like to joke with.
Oh, you're cutting off. You're cutting off just a little bit.
When I go to talk, I lose reception on my phone.
Okay, there you are.
Is that any better?
Good. That's good.
Okay. Yeah, so I have a PhD in reproduction. Literally every time I go to talk, it cuts off. I'm not sure.
You're good. You're good now. I will let you know.
I'm going to take a walk around and see if I can find some place that has better cell service.
Okay.
Because that's really the problem here, is a lack of cell service in this big metal building that I'm in.
Oh, Well, I suppose you were okay for a little while there, Carol, but maybe since people are joining, we could just give them some information while you're walking around a little bit, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah. So you said you started to say that you've done a lot with third-party reproduction in the lab, and that most of the work is related to that. Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah,
Okay.
a lot of what I do is related to third party. Is this any better?
Yes. Yes.
It is better? Okay, good.
I, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I have a PhD in reproduction, and my PhD in reproduction led me, down a couple of pathways first, but eventually to clinical embryology. So I am so excited to be able to help people on their family building journey from the inside of the lab and apply just like all the science that I've ever done, even though that was on the research side, to what we do now in the clinical lab. And yes, so much of what I do is building families through third party reproduction. So dealing with donor sperm, transferring embryos into gestational carriers, and just making these families happen.
That's really amazing because, I don't think that very many people think about how much goes on in the lab in terms of donor conception. Oh, you're breaking up, Carol. Hello?
Yeah, and
Oh,
so much of that also has to do with the data and the traceability of embryos. So the different types of tissues that go into making the embryos, but then who they belong to, right? So this actually kind of leads me into my app that I made, which is all about tracking the data in the IVF lab and then making sure that the patients and the providers know what's in the cryo storage for each patient. They know exactly what embryos are there, what the genetic status of each embryo is, and what the tissues were that went into making up that embryo.
wow. So what does that really mean to those of us
Yeah,
that are
so
not embryologists or doctors?
yeah, so it's all about managing the data from IVF labs, and so what that comes down to is it's really like when the patient or the egg source, let's say, comes in, we take their eggs into the lab, and those eggs, the sperm, and the resulting embryos need to be tracked with unique identifiers from the very beginning of the cycle all the way through the time that they're put into the cryo storage. And that means they're frozen with liquid nitrogen and they're waiting for their mamas to come back and pick them up again.
Oh, that's so sweet. So the question I have is, would you know if it was somebody that was using a donor or not while you're doing this? Would that even be anything that entered any of the
Oh,
information? Or,
yes.
oh, you
We have
would?
to know. So, oh yes. So we are the safe keepers of that information, if you will. We
Uh-huh.
know, even for the anonymous donors, we know the ID of the donors, particularly the egg donors. And if it's going to be a fresh sperm sample, that's a fresh donor rather than a frozen donor. But yes, we know unless we're getting it from a sperm bank or an oocyte bank where the tissue has already been de-anonymized, we know the exact um, information about who those donors are. So we really are entrusted with a lot of very, secret, very special information.
So I think honestly, and you and I have not discussed this before, so I'm sorry to like bring this up, having not discussed
That's
this.
okay.
But I think a lot of donor conceived people would be very, very happy to hear that because
Yeah.
they don't want to think that they don't know where their biology comes from.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so interesting, like the way that society attaches some sort of moral implication to donor tissues because these are living donors. I think that's one issue with it.
Uh-huh.
And because obviously there is a lot of around sex and reproduction, a lot of shame, a lot of secrecy around sex and reproduction. But for us, the way we think about it is for a living tissue donor, it is very similar to somebody who's alive who donates a kidney or blood or um, bone marrow for somebody who has leukemia. These are tissues that people need to live. They treat disease, and there are other human beings alive who want to donate these tissues in a truly, you know, altruistic manner. Um, and it's so very important for, you know, people to be tissue donors and for us to be able to help out our fellow suffering human being, right? If we can, we should.
I love the way you're putting that. I've never heard it put that way. And I love the way you're putting that. I really do, because what you're doing is you're breaking it down to exactly what it is.
Yes,
And
exactly.
it's
It's
loaded
a
because,
living tissue donation.
yeah, and you mentioned
Hmm.
so many things just now in what kind of that couple of sentences, because you were talking about people of the same sex having babies, and then you were talking about heterosexual couples having babies. And there is a distinction there between feelings associated with both groups, not to mention like the cultural or the religious or any other segments that fall into that.
Absolutely. So one of the
So
things
to
that I
break
think
it
is
down in
really
a way that it's
interesting,
tissue.
it is tissue, it's cells, and one of the things that's really interesting is that there has been an evolution in the field. A long time ago, there used to be something widely practiced called confused insemination. That's where sperm from a donor and sperm from a husband would be mixed together and delivered to the woman so that the couple would have something which was called plausible deniability. They could live the rest of their life thinking, and the doctor often told them this, that the donor sperm would carry the husband's sperm to the egg. And a lot of people who are coming of age now and getting their genes tested at, 23andMe or other are finding out father is not who, their genetic father, I should say, is not who they thought that it was growing up. And this was a way for families to not have the shame of infertility brought upon them. But now I think it's so interesting with the effort that you're undertaking to normalize third party reproduction. So many families are now having this conversation with their children, whether those are autologous, partners, same sex couples, or single parents by choice. So children nowadays mostly know that they were how they were conceived.
Yeah.
And part of your effort to update the medical record forms and the patient intake forms at medical practices is so important now because the whole field of IVF is only 40 years old, right? So the first wave of people who maybe didn't know how they were conceived has come and gone, and now they're getting their own infertility treatment, and they're explaining the provenance of the genetics of to their
Yeah.
children.
Well,
And
what
so
we're
in the
finding,
next 40
yeah,
years,
what
yeah,
we're finding is that they they haven't gone. They're using their voice now, and they're advocating. So
yes,
right now, we're hearing their voices, and we're hearing how important it is for them to understand information about their genetics. And so, not that they don't absolutely love the parents who raised them and adore them, but there's the biology that they want to know a little bit more about. And it opens up a
yeah,
whole nother level
absolutely.
of conversation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So I know we wanted to talk about DNA a little bit.
yes, absolutely, because I
Yes.
find this fascinating. I really do.
So from a scientist perspective about DNA, um, always have a couple different thoughts. I think something we've talked about before. DNA is not actually what makes a family. It's love.
Right.
It's being there day in and day out, and it's everything that goes into raising the seed that was planted, right?
Right.
Like
Absolutely.
I I think so much that my family throughout my life has been family that I have chosen. Friends who are best friends, who are like sisters to me, and their children are growing up
Mhm.
as my daughter's, cousins. And the person that you marry, you're not related to them, but you become family with them. They don't have the same genetics that you do, but they are your family. And there are so
Yeah.
many examples of that. Aunties who've raised you like a mother, stepfathers who are closer to you than your own dad. A lot of times people have very strained relationships with the ones that they are genetically related to, right? So DNA for me, it's like the least of what makes you a family. And scientifically speaking, our DNA changes over our
Can I
lifetime.
interrupt you for just 1 second? There,
Yeah,
there was a newscast on one of these Sunday morning newscasts on, and they were talking exactly about that. They were talking about how families today, I think it was like 50, it was a large percentage, I don't remember the percentage of families where they don't talk to each other anymore. Children don't talk to parents, siblings don't talk, and 54% think it's the other person's fault. And not only that, what they went on to say was that people are closer with their friends and that they want that their friends then become family, that the need for that kind of biological family isn't there as much anymore. It was really a fascinating kind of thing they did. It was on CBS, Sunday morning CBS. I have to go back and watch it so I have the
yes,
statistics. But it's
I
interesting.
feel
It's
that.
exactly what you're saying, just a different
Yes,
avenue of it.
yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
And, it makes sense,
right,
like, the, with the,
right.
different as a human race. We are not, we're kind of evolving away from that cave dwelling mentality where you might never leave the town that you were born in for your whole entire life, right? I mean,
Right.
my grandmother probably, if she were still alive and I talked to her about it, she would probably tell me how infrequently she ever went anywhere outside of our hometown. And it's just so different now with us.
So different. Yeah, it's true. Everybody's going all over the world, so it's very different. Very different. So when it comes down to the DNA and when it comes down to siblings and it comes down to looking at the science, is there anything about that resonates when you're talking about donor conception where you could see like similarities or differences?
Yeah. So, one of the things that I always think about with DNA is how much of our genes we actually share with the smallest single cell organisms. So, tree, because there are certain genes that do not change. Like, let me give you a couple examples. The genes that control the cell cycle, so when the cell, how and when the cell divides.
Mhm.
Genes that control metabolism, big pathways, vitamin synthesis pathways. And those things are what we refer to as being evolutionarily conserved. You can look in different animals, and the genes can be, 99% similar to some archaic bacteria. And it's the exact same gene doing the exact same thing in us. So we are all related to different organisms. Now, human beings obviously much more closely related to each other. And I was thinking about this the other day because I had a friend who was asking me if I thought they should use their sister's oocytes, for
Oh,
as an
okay.
egg
That's
donor.
becoming
And so I
yeah,
was explaining,
right.
yeah, yes, becoming more and more popular. And so I was explaining to
Yes.
them that in the general way we think about things, we tend to think that our siblings are 50% related to us. But that 50% is actually an average. It's an average across all siblings. So each sibling can be 0%
Wait, you
related to
cut
you.
off. Wait,
And that
wait, you
all
cut off for a
just
second.
matters. Oh, okay. It really matters
Mhm.
that you have can be
I'm sorry, Carol,
0%
you're cutting
related to
off,
you,
and we definitely want to get
50%
this.
related to you.
Okay, let's start from
Let me
50%
try a
could be
different.
related. Okay, you got cut off after 50% could be related.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think people tend to think that their siblings are 50% related to them.
Mm-hmm.
But siblings can actually be anywhere from 0% related to you to 100% related to you. And that all comes down to the alleles that got split into each egg during meiosis, each egg and each sperm. Mm-hmm. So in theory, your siblings can, each oocyte that they have, or each sperm cell that they have, is much less related to you than you think it is. And the chromosomes actually come from our 4 grandparents, and they get split up. And so it's that percentage.
Wait. I have to back you up for 2 reasons.
Sibling could donate. It keeps cutting out.
Yeah, so you were saying, and
Does
this
it
is
keep
pretty
cutting out?
fascinating, that, yeah, this is pretty fascinating what you're saying. And so I know about the grandparents, and that your grandparents are, and that's where you kind of got cut off about your grandparents and their DNA and your genetics.
How does it sound now?
Better. That's good.
Still
You were
bad?
really good for a while, so don't move.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I'm like leaning against the window. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay.
So,
It's nice to see the light. We don't have that much more time, so this is fine anyway. So we're good.
So you're
so you were starting with
yeah,
the grandparents. If you could repeat that part, that would be great.
exactly. So what happens in meiosis is that our chromosome number gets cut down to 1/2 the number of chromosomes, because it's going to combine with the half coming from the sperm. So the percentage, or the alleles of each chromosome that gets into each egg or each sperm,
Wow. So it's skipping a generation altogether. Uh-huh.
actual genetics, you see things that skip a generation and they seem to come directly from that grandparent or that grandparental allele. And that's exactly where it's coming from. So each egg that your sister donates to you could be 0% related to you, or it could be 100%, and it can be anywhere in between. It can be 25% related to you, 75% related to you. And, our DNA changes in many other ways throughout our lifetime. Our DNA changes when we get vaccinated. Our DNA changes with every pregnancy we have. That means every miscarriage, too. Some of those fetal cells get into your bloodstream. They found them in people's brains. They found them in tissues all throughout the body. That also, our DNA changes in response to our environment. That's called epigenetics. So the expression of different genes changes depending on your diet, your exposure to, pollution, or your, different things that you do during your lifetime. And so our DNA is really much more flexible than people give it credit for.
It's funny because what you're saying is something that I think everybody should know, especially in this community, because people don't. This is not common knowledge. I mean, it's not.
Yes.
I think it's so important for people to recognize that it's a fluid. It's fluid. It
is fluid. Yes.
It's part
and
of
the
it.
more and the more and more we know about DNA sequencing, we're finding people who have mosaic tissues all throughout their body, where some of the DNA is unexpected. It's coming from, a twin from in utero that was absorbed. It's coming from, you're supposed to get all of your mitochondrial DNA from your mother, but we're finding certain people alive whose mitochondrial DNA actually comes from their father. And so the more we find out about genetics, actually, the more we learn that we don't know.
Like everything in life.
Like everything in life, right?
So you have to wonder why people walk around, and feel any kind of shame or any kind of embarrassment, or why things have to be private, or why things have to be secret, when we're just talking about some tissues, some cells, and some
Some
cells,
DNA that's shared with bacteria.
right, and that evolve over time. We
And
do
that
know,
evolved over
and
time.
I'm not sure where this comes from, but we do know that people do look like each other. Like when you were talking before, I don't have children of my own. I have stepchildren, and they have children. And I will tell you that my grandson, I call him, right, is the image, or was at one point the absolute image. He's a baby of my husband. There was like no denying it. It was pretty wild. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering, as that evolves and his looks change, is that the DNA changing and the structure of the DNA changing? Or is that like a
Yeah.
ridiculous question?
No, it's not a ridiculous question, but I do think that, the way that people grow and the way that their face changes and the way that they come into their own, through life
Mm-hmm.
is partly dependent on the DNA that they inherited and then partly dependent on their lifestyle. So if you are growing up under similar conditions, similar nutritional conditions, maybe
Yes.
even that are meeting or exceeding what your grandparent had, um, all of that can play into it. I started to look much more like my grandmother and much less like my mother after I had my own baby.
Right.
It was really interesting. So after I had my own baby, I'm like evolving into my grandmother. So.
So it's really interesting. So what I'm taking from this is, as we worry about, or when people start off on a journey to have a baby, and then they go for third-party reproduction, if it was not what they anticipated. Most heterosexual couples don't anticipate using third-party reproduction, which is the
Yes.
difference between the LGBTQ community. They assume that they will, or if you have a medical diagnosis, and so the emphasis and the focus very often is before the child is born. How do I connect? And who's the child going to look like? And, all of these other questions. And really what you find on the other side of that is that as the parent becomes comfortable with the story, and as the child grows and becomes, a teenager, a teenager, an adult, you see similarities, and you see all of the nurturing that's gone into play, and you see habits that have formed, and you
Yes.
see likes and dislikes, and you can actually
Yes.
see, what happens, I find, is that because the people become so connected, they begin to look like each other in many
And
ways.
you see that in marriage too, right? How many
You
times do
too,
you see a
don't you?
couple and you know that they've been together a long, long time because they look like each other?
Yes. It's true. Sometimes it's scary, but it's true. So in doing all of this, right, and in trying to normalize it, and when you started off saying, and if anybody has, anything that they want to add, I know there's not too many listeners, but people will listen after as well. So if there's questions that you want to send in, please do. But as you look at this, right, and we start off and we say that, we say that, you have all of the information, even if other people don't. How do we make sure that people become comfortable with their story? How do we get the word out more and more that this is just tissue, and it's tissue that we all have, whether we're a bacteria or whether we're a person? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I think that is just so important for doctors and, you know, everyone who talks about this and thinks about this to relay this message that if you needed a kidney transplant, you would not be ashamed. You would be out there, making a GoFundMe for it. You'd be screaming it from the rooftops. If you need a blood transfusion because you have gotten into a car accident, right, you're not going to be ashamed that you had to have that tissue from another living human being. So I think it's just a matter of reframing it, thinking about it for what it is, taking away the moral connotation, which maybe could come from different religions, or just the way that you grew up. If there was a lot of shame around conversations about reproduction and sex and
Well, we're all
um,
taught, the thing is, we're all taught to believe that it's normal and we're just going to have a baby when we want to have a baby and there's no problem and there's no issue with it. And so that's why the word normalized came up. I personally prefer being comfortable in your own skin. I've said that a few times, but that's where the word normalized came in. It came in because everybody should absolutely be able to feel the same way on this path and on this journey. And if the medical community can't talk about it and can't address it, well, I don't know who can. We have to, it starts with the
absolutely,
medical community. So we need them to
absolutely.
start this trend, I think. And I don't think it's a big ask.
No, and I think it's timely, right? So this is the time to do it. The science of IVF is now 40 years old, and the people are coming of age who have been conceived with these donor tissues. Society has changed, it's become more open, and we've become more embracing of all of these different ways to build families in general, right? Which is so great that the arc of progress keeps heading in the right direction, as they say. So man, I love your initiative so much to update these medical intake forms, because I think that is, like you've mentioned a few times, that is really one of the first steps of physicians getting to know a patient, um, and getting to know the particular issues that may arise from that. Um,
Yeah, and the other piece that I maybe not today, but I say quite frequently, and somebody who I work with actually points it out quite frequently, is that if it's on a form, then everybody sees it and everybody starts to get comfortable with how people are brought into this world and how they're conceived. So it's for the medical community, but it's also for the people who don't know anything about this. So we could all just get comfortable with the conversation. So, if everybody can kind of put their big toe in the water and maybe begin to start being comfortable talking to their circle, that would be a wonderful thing. Are you there? Yeah, Carol? I think I lost Carol again for a minute. Well,
yeah, I'm so sorry that.
no, that's okay. But thank you so much for today. Thank you for coming on. I hope people are able to go and look at ART Compass, because you offer a wealth of access to being able to organize information and keep it there for the doctors and for the person going on a fertility journey. And I mean, you just shared so much information today that I think people just don't know. And I think the general
Yes,
public
and
only can
I,
benefit from knowing it. So thank you.
I would love to write it up into a couple posts that we'll share on Instagram, because I know the audio was kind of spotty in and out. So we'll be able to share them back and forth.
Okay, that would be great.
All right. Thank
Absolutely. And
you,
I'm going to share
Lori.
this great. Even though the audio was spotty, I'm going to share this, and and we'll see what we could do with it. But thank you so much, and maybe we'll be able to do something else with better audio one day. Okay, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Definitely.
And anybody who
Okay.
wants any, okay, bye everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
I have my glasses on to turn this off.